The Fruitful Entrepreneurs podcast aims to increase the visibility of female leaders in business, inspire a limitless mindset to build your own blooming brand, and leave a positive impact with a purpose-driven business. Welcome to the Fruitful Entrepreneurs podcast, where we share unique stories about female founders, their journey, and their strategies to success. I'm your host, Shelley Tilbrook, and today I'm joined by Dr. Ariella Heffernan-Marks. She has founded Ovum, the first personal health assistant powered by AI to support women. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on your Fruitful Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm very honoured.
Terrific. Well, I loved, I suppose, the background when I came across your profile is that you're improving women's health and taking on pretty big, monumental systemic changes with your, I suppose, goals. So firstly, tell us more about Ovum and what it does.
So Ovum is the first AI health system for women. So it's a woman's personal health ally. It really is to empower women with their healthcare so they feel like they can advocate for themselves and therefore get better healthcare. So the way it works is women can speak to Ovum like they would a best friend or a doctor, ask questions, report symptoms, and get evidence-based and easy to understand information they can trust, whilst integrating all of their health reports in one place so they're easy to access and not so fragmented and siloed, and therefore track their health longitudinally and share that with either their healthcare providers, keep it to themselves so they can understand their bodies better, or share it with research institutions that are that are affiliated with Ovum. So we actually begin to fill the longitudinal data gap.
Incredible. And we should mention Ovum is an app that will be available. Is it available publicly at the moment, or it's still in?
So it will be ready. It's a MVP, so it's a minimum viable product at the moment. So it's a test version that women can sign up on our website. So if you go to ovum-ai.com.au, you can sign up to our focus groups and trial Ovum for free. You can also find it on our Instagram page as well. So you can use Ovum for 3 months for free, give us feedback about what is working and what is not. So really trying to co-design Ovum with women. So make a product for women rather than just providing an app and saying, here, use it. We want to hear from women and make sure that it is actually tailoring a solution to their problems. Yeah. So yes, it is an app at the moment. Will be available hopefully soon on the App Store, but we want to run this 3-month trial first to make sure everything's working perfectly.
Yeah, terrific. And your background being obviously a doctor in the medical profession, you identified, I suppose, some gaps in women's health or some issues. I'd love to sort of hear from your point of view what they were and how you're sort of trying to help women improve their health.
Yeah, sure. So I guess my background being, I started in law science and I did reproductive biology and embryology as my major and focused my research in endometrial cancer. So I was always very passionate about women's health. And that actually inspired me to become a doctor. So I decided I want to be an obstetrician gynecologist. I want to train women's healthcare. So then I got into med school and just finished my internship at Prince of Wales in January. But it was during med school in COVID. I was going between New South Wales and Victoria. I was working in primary care settings as well as hospital settings. And I realised that women were fundamentally disempowered with their healthcare regardless of socioeconomic status, because I was really in regional, remote, as well as urban hospitals. And I realised it was due to 3 main things. So firstly was fear of the healthcare system. So often going to Dr. Google or TikTok rather than a healthcare provider, due to decades of being marginalised, often dismissed or even misdiagnosed. And this was leading to lower health literacy and therefore more chronic health conditions. So in Australia, we know 54% of women over the age of 15 already have one chronic health condition. And by 65, that's 87%.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I know it's like the statistics, especially in the Australian healthcare system, are pretty shocking because, we do pride ourselves on having quite a good healthcare system. And women are over 50% of the population. So there's a lot of people who are suffering with chronic health problems that really impact on their quality of life. But second of all, women were really struggling to navigate the siloed and fragmented approach to their healthcare. And this is a very well evidenced problem. The government have invested $330 million into the Action Plan for Women, which is fundamentally, trying to achieve a lifespan approach to women's healthcare. And I realized that as a result of this, women were obviously seeing different doctors and not able to integrate all their health information. And this was leading to longer diagnostic times. So in Australia, it takes 5 years on average for any woman to be diagnosed with a general health condition. And for something like endometriosis, it's something between 7 to 12 years, which is a really long time to be suffering for something that you don't have an answer for.
Mm.
And then thirdly, women were receiving, treatments and diagnostics that were not reflective of women's physiology. And this is because women have been excluded from clinical trials for decades due to reproductive burden, meaning a lot of our medications have been based off men. Yet these medications are still being used to treat women, women's conditions that actually they suffer disproportionately from, for example, heart disease. So it was these three problems that really made me want to create a solution that educated women with their own health journey, so empowered them to really, I guess, be preventative with their healthcare and engaged in their healthcare, but at the same time begin to collect longitudinal women's health data. We could actually feed back into research to begin to fill this, what we now know is a gender health gap, which is a, $1 trillion problem according to the McKinsey latest health report. So, yeah.
Well, you certainly know your numbers, and I do love a data-driven problem where you've actually looked at those numbers and seen, look, there is a significant issue that needs to be addressed, and it's a pretty significant and big one that you're taking on, which I find so impressive that you are tackling this issue. You're in the very early stages of your startup. You mentioned you've just got 300 people in the trial of the MVP. Talk us through the process to date from, I suppose, coming up with that idea or seeing those statistics and thinking I could do something about it through to the MVP, because I'd love to sort of hear about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's been just over 2 years or just around 2 years now. I was in my third year of med school, so I had the idea, was literally driving on the freeway, and I was like, oh, I know how children have like the blue book or the green book that tracks their health over their first few years of life. Like, why don't we have that for women? And then that's kind of how it started. And then I just started speaking to doctors, GPs, women's health doctors through, my med cohort. I had access to actually a lot of really good resources to begin validating my idea. And then I actually reached out to Femtech Collective, which is a collective which really supports women founders or, women with business ideas and really guides them on where to go. And it was Megan, who I believe is CEO of Femtech Collective, who said, I know the market, you've actually got a really good solution. There's nothing else on the market like this. This is what you need to do. I was like, because I had no commercial background whatsoever, told me, okay, you need a pitch deck, you need to start doing surveys with women, you need to start, doing all this stuff. So that's what I did. I started speaking to women. I ran surveys. I did around 150 with women aged between 16 through to 70 and really divided up into age groups. So 15 to 25, 26 to 45, 45 plus, because we know that women in these different, parts of their lifespan are dealing with different issues, but they're all interrelated. So through that, I really got validation for the need and want, I guess, for a tool like Ovum, and like the gap just was even bigger when I had, women sharing such, really vulnerable stories with me and how Ovum could have prevented some of the trauma they experienced during those journeys. And then through that, I actually did Cicada Innovations through the New South Wales government have a great course called Software as a Medical Device, and it teaches you how to commercialize basically health tech ideas within that realm. And through that was a 3-day course. It went through everything from raising, different types, whether that's grants, private, family offices, high net worth individuals, VCs. I had no idea about any of these terms. Regulation. Where does your idea fit in a regulatory landscape? Legals, privacy. Like there was so much. It was so beneficial. And again, you're meeting other people with amazing health tech ideas, and it really again validated what I was doing. And from there, I met someone Dina, who's the head of the 10X Health UNSW accelerator. And I did the pre-accelerator with them. This is my 4th year. So I was like doing my final med exams and doing this as well.
Wow.
Which was a lot, but definitely worth it. Again, it just took Ovum to another level. I was connected to the George Global Institute for Health. I really got an understanding of what it looked like to get from an idea to MVP and just pushed Ovum to that next level. And through that, I then, during that time, got my first investment. Nakatomi were my developers. They're a Sydney-based company, now venture studio, who invested in Ovum from just the idea. I didn't even have a product. I was drawing out what I thought Ovum would look like on Figma, and it did not look like a really good, it didn't, look right. I had no idea what I was doing. They were probably laughing at me, but they believed in me, and they believed in my vision, and they're still helping develop Ovum now, which is, they've been along the whole journey. So that's been incredible. My investors have co-invested, again, as I've progressed. So I've gone from then developing the prototype with Nakatomi, and then as part of the Springboard Enterprises Evolve program, so that's just for women founders. And that really helped me perfect my pitch and what I was, how I was selling this commercially to investors. And that was a big, again, another hurdle. Like, what is my business model? How am I going to access, percentages of the market? Who are my early adopters? All of this, yes, commercial language that I had no idea about. So, and again, it connected me with amazing women and amazing people throughout this journey who've really helped me get to where I am. And now I did my internship. So it's like doing this all at the same time and getting Ovum now to MVP took another lot of investment, again, from Denholm family who've supported me, endlessly through my whole journey and have just been such incredible, investors from just allowing me as a founder to grow and do what I believe is my vision. And here we are now doing this MVP, which is like fully functional version of the app, does everything and more that we thought it could. It's meeting, the highest levels of privacy and cybersecurity, which has always been like a really big goal for us, but also a big financial hurdle because using like the best softwares obviously costs more. But the revolution of AI has allowed us to do a lot more than we thought we even could. Because when I had the idea, AI was not something everyone was using. At the same time, through my connections with the George, I met Associate Professor Amanda Henry. She's on our board. She's a leader in research in obstetrics and gynecology at St George Hospital and the Royal Hospital for Women. And now we're looking at doing clinical trials towards the end of this year. But we're just in the process of getting ethics on that. So we'll see how that goes. But really want to have this, available to women in the hospital setting as well. Then as well, I guess, I've had incredible support from Associate Professor Susan Evans, who's the head of the Pelvic Pain Foundation, which is running their amazing Pep Talk program, which is educating young girls in schools about pains, periods, and endometriosis. And she's been on our board really advising and supporting Ovum as a tool that can really help young girls understand more about their health. So there's a lot of exciting things happening, but I couldn't have done it without, having all these people around me, supporting me and guiding me.
Well, you've obviously gone through a massive learning curve. Like you've obviously had that training in the medical side of things, but stepping into commercials, stepping into learning tech, working with developers, how to pitch, all the funding grants. But yeah, hats off to you for what you've been able to achieve in just 2 years. It's incredible. Your passion talking about it and your knowledge as well is really shines through. With getting to market, what do you think will be your biggest challenge to like launch it publicly? Have you sort of got plans in place already, or what are you sort of anticipating as your next sort of challenge to overcome?
I think, an app is always really hard, to get people to uptake anyway. And so, a lot of what Ovum's doing as well is behavior change. So it's about changing from reactive healthcare to preventative. So not only are we, trying to get someone to download this app, we're also trying to get them to actually change in how they manage their health through using Ovum. So we have two kind of challenges here. The first challenge is, which I'm already addressing now, is by building community. So I'm sure you've seen Ovum's been doing wellness event, educating women on, eating disorders and body dysmorphia. We're going to do some more looking at, prenatal, postnatal and pelvic floor and like some of the complications that can come with that. And really, collaborating with women's empowerment brands. That's not just wellness, whether that's, Pilates, exercise, where that makes women feel good, whether that's, sleepwear, sexual wellness products, a lot of, brands for our crowd through our crowdfunding campaign, which I actually forgot to mention we are doing through Lift Women, which is a platform only for women founders to raise from the community. So through that, we've actually partnered with women's empowerment brands as rewards for anyone that donates to Ovum. So you can go on the Lift Women website, and our crowdfunding campaign's on there. So if you want to contribute, all that money is going to go to improving Ovum, so it's better for women. But yes, so really building community and showing that Ovum is not just a product, it is a brand that is advocating for women's empowerment with their health, whether that's through education events, whether that's, having me as a leader in the women's health space and educating women through our social media platforms, hopefully at some point getting into more advocacy roles to make changes, partnering with other, leading companies that can actually make real differences to women's experiences with healthcare with some of the data that we collect, and obviously doing trials that show that we're actually making sure this is evidence-based so women can trust, that Ovum it cares about its users. It's not just trying to sell a product. And I think that's what I really want to create with Ovum. So I think that will help us, that community will grow during our trial period, because obviously we're going to have, direct connection with a lot of women that are using the app and asking for feedback. We're also running focus groups at the moment. We've been running with some of these women and having the most amazing conversations, all anonymously. So everyone's a different emoji, and it actually is great because it kind of is a bit of an icebreaker. It's like, oh, hi, eggplant, or hi, burger. Yeah, me too. I was completely dismissed and told that my stomach pain was anxiety when it was appendicitis. So, building this community, I think, will only grow more through these trials, which is why we're doing what we're doing. And then I think behavior change, I think that comes from the community building, but obviously I said education. So really educating women on the fact that caring about themselves is not just going to the doctor when they're sick. It's about tracking their symptoms, getting, regular checkups every few months, blood tests, and understanding what they mean. And really, if they're waking up with certain symptoms every day, actually talk to Ovum about it. Try and understand why you're experiencing that. Integrate that with some of the blood tests that you've had to really understand what's going on with your body. And then also knowing when you actually do need to go and see a doctor, rather than avoiding the doctor at all costs, because I think this new generation of young girls that are coming through, unfortunately, they don't trust the healthcare system and they don't trust doctors, and often will go, as I said, to Dr. Google or TikTok rather than seeking help from their doctors when they need to. And that's where Ovum steps in as well, is actually it does recommend when women need to go see the doctor. Because often I think we are managing so much as women, whether that's career, children, ourselves, and often women will, put themselves to, the back and say, looking around everyone else, that's biology, we're carers, we're nurturers, except for ourselves. And I think that's where Ovum will come in and say, actually shift that. Like it's, you actually do need to go see someone, a nutritionist, dietitian, whoever it is, to support what you're going through. So I think that change will hopefully happen through the community building, through the education piece, and through linking with other women's empowerment brands that women trust, because women, I think we like brands, we like aesthetic, we like trends. And I think if we can make Ovum, as trendy as getting the latest face cream from Mecca, then that's going to be how we access a large part of the market that are young women that currently maybe not engaging in their health as much as they should be.
Yeah, well, I'd definitely say I suppose, steps that you put in place for the privacy element will certainly encourage people to actively use it and maximize, I suppose, what they're trying to get out of their health. I think that's a fabulous idea. And then in terms of, you did mention the crowdfunding campaign with Lyft, and we will absolutely be putting those links down so people can support and get involved, because I think it's a fabulous cause that you're driving.
Lift Women was great, just for anyone who's listening, any woman who's listening to this who's, got an amazing idea or a business, doesn't matter how far along you are, definitely look at Lift Women as another way of raising funds that obviously don't dilute your equity. That's obviously the benefit. And they do run a grant challenge every year, which I was part of. So as one of the 10 finalists, I actually did win best project. So that money goes into your crowdfunding campaign, which is just incredible. And the networks and the people you meet, I think, are really amazing. I met amazing women throughout APAC and just got a really good experience of like the global, of a global market. So I definitely encourage any women listening to have a look.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's no doubt quite a few, because we pitch to female founders, so I'm sure there's many
Sure they are listening.
piquing their interest on how to do
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
Over the journey, what have been your most valuable lessons learnt in developing Ovum? Would there be certain things that you're like, that was gold, learning that lesson?
I think for me, everyone talks about intuition, and I think some people can tune into their intuition more than others. I think everyone has it. I think I've actually learnt that I do act intuitively a lot of the time, and only through getting a business coach is actually probably my second lesson. I've really learnt that my intuition has been the most important thing throughout this whole process, because if I hadn't listened to my intuition during medical school, when I had people turn to me and say, "Why are you looking at doing like that? Aren't you going to be a doctor?" I would have probably listened, right? Because they're your peers. And I didn't. I was like, no, this is what I'm going to do. If I had been told, don't ever outsource a developer, which I understand because it's expensive, I wouldn't have found Nakatomi, who have been the most incredible team to me. And the journey with them has only allowed Ovum to be where it is today, and the quality. Okay. Like, I knew that this was going to be a product that was dealing with very sensitive information. It's going to be, something that hopefully changed women's experience with healthcare. And the only way to do that was to do that properly. I'm not saying you can't get a co-founder and have them help develop an app, but for me, my intuitive, decision was to find someone like Nakatomi, and I did. If when we were trying to solve how we were technologically going to make Ovum work, AI had just come out, or ChatGPT, and there was a lot of back talk and a lot of, people saying, no, don't like this, don't trust it. It's not, obviously AI is going to keep growing, but, it's very negative talk right now. I think we're starting to get a little bit more positive. We're starting to gain a bit more trust. There's still issues, definitely, but we know it's here to stay. And we had different pitches as to what technology we're going to use and where we're going to focus Ovum. And it was my intuition to say, this is what we're going to make it to. And I'm so happy that I did. And I think a lot of my decisions are just, honestly, they're taking the advice, because so many people are going to give you advice, so many people from different avenues. And I think if you don't know how to select what you think is the right thing for you and your company, it can often overwhelm you and sometimes lead you to the wrong decision. That is where also having a business coach or executive coach is really helpful. I had never heard of that prior to going to this tech networking event. And there was some, leading, startup founders there who'd sold their companies for, a lot of money, and been kind of in the Bay Area in San Fran, in the ecosystem. They're talking about, business coaches. And I'm like, what is this? They really guide you in all your decisions, and they help you with like mind, body, spirit. So it's, being a founder, being a CEO is so much more than just running the company. It's developing yourself. And I've been now seeing my business coach for 6 months, and it's just been revolutionary for me in terms of my own personal growth, but what I've also been able to do for the company. So I'd say they're probably my 2 lessons to anyone out there about, I guess, turning your idea or your dream into a reality.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic to hear. Yes. No, being a business coach, I am interested in seeing the amount of leads. Like, I attract female founders that want to start or scale a business, and there are some lead generation tools I use, and the amount of males, seeking an executive coach as a employee is staggering over women. And I think, the more people that can have that support of a business coach just helps them excel, whether it is career or business. Is certainly a great tool and great way to sort of progress.
Massively. I think it it really makes you think differently or acknowledge the ways in which you are thinking about certain things, whether it's yourself or whether it is your company. And to have that sounding board that is, knows you really well by the time you've gone through 6 months,
Yeah.
is, amazing. I couldn't recommend it more.
And
And
the
if
other point you made about intuition was, I think I've said it before on the podcast, but where I've made a mistake is where I actually didn't follow my intuition. So yeah, I definitely lean more into my intuition now. I still love data-driven decision making, but like you say, you take on all the advice, you look at all the data, but you have to follow your intuition, making those bold decisions. So yeah.
I think so. I don't think I always acknowledged. I didn't know that's what I was doing sometimes. Which I think is another important message is everyone kind of, I think you have a picture of what intuition is, but how it feels to different people is, it's different. For me, it's just a in my stomach feeling, and I guess that's like that gut kind of concept. But people feel in different ways in their heart, in their, in visioning, they might dream about something a lot. And I think it's acknowledging that you actually might be thinking, or with your intuition, you're just not recognizing it, because I've only retrospectively gone back and been like, I just made that decision. Like I looked at people were telling me things, but I just went, no, I'm doing this. And yeah, I've just learnt that kind of in the last few weeks, and I've been like reflecting a bit more. So yeah, I think intuition's super powerful. And I think the more I think it used to also be seen as, oh, wacky spiritual stuff. But I think if you talk to some really successful, ambitious, leaders in whatever that is, whether that's business or, advocacy or, anyone in that space, I think you'd find that they do act a lot on intuition and are connected with their intuition a lot.
Absolutely. You did touch on, I suppose, a couple of your learnings earlier on, but I'm curious to see, obviously, with that medical background in the health industry, when you started your business, what were your skill gaps that you realized you had to sort of, I suppose, evolve and develop pretty quickly?
I would say the commercial, and the commercial language. I didn't know. They were like B2C, B2B to C. And I was like, what is this? I've never heard of this in my life. Serviceable, attainable market, market share, like what did all this valuation? I quickly was like reading articles and trying to understand. That's the Cicada course was so good because it like really was like, this is a pitch deck. I didn't even know what a pitch deck was. And it sounds really stupid now, but I'd come from, very like law science into medicine, into being in the hospital. It was just, streamlined, and learning how to do a pitch deck was not something you learnt. I didn't even know what needed to be in a pitch deck. So that was, I think, one of the skill set that I really had to kind of get onto quickly. Not that I found it was like particularly, that challenging. It was just like really understanding the terms. I think understanding how you calculate like the financials and really understanding that in depth. Nakatomi have been really good with me as well from a commercial advisory point of view, because at the end of the day, I'd never run a business. So it was, all exciting things. I was like so curious and excited to learn all this, because I knew that regardless of, at this point, it was an idea, but regardless of this idea, this knowledge was power for me to do other things and build my network and my capability and my scope in my career beyond just being in the hospital, which of course, being in the hospital is so important for clinical experience. And I wouldn't have had this idea or this knowledge without being in the hospital. But I've always been very advocacy, very population health driven. And I think having this knowledge has allowed me to not just create Ovum, but will allow me to, potentially create other solutions to help impact populations rather than maybe necessarily just being in the hospital, which is still very important. But I think for me personally, that's where I thrive. I think other skill sets, I mean, there's obviously, the networking and the constant pitching and learning elevator pitch, first of all, pitch and all of that kind of stuff, and really perfecting that. But, in medicine, you're constantly talking, you're constantly presenting and, but it's different. A research presentation is very different to a pitch presentation. So you said I was very data driven. I had to tone that down because my first pitch deck was, data, reference. And at the time, it's actually Megan, I think I talked about Femtech Collective, was like, great research. This is a business pitch. You need to like be fluffy and sell it. And I was like, but then it's not evidence-based. Like I can't just make up I can't just say that. She's like, yeah, you can. It's like business, and then you can put something in the notes. So it was really just adjusting how I was so used to presenting an idea. Yeah, so that for me, it was a transition actually between my clinical training and, kind of refining it for a commercial angle.
Well, yeah, I always talk about people buy on emotion but rationalize with logic. And so the statistics are great to get it over the line, but you really want to compel them emotionally, move them to that state of passion and wanting to support the idea. So that probably leads into my next question. You mentioned earlier that you won the Lift Women Award at the pitch night. So congratulations. I'd be curious to hear from you what you felt were the strong elements of your pitch, or if you'd got feedback, what were the things that sort of you felt either brought investors or winning that pitch across the line?
Interesting. I feel like one of my kind of fatal flaws is I can never like acknowledge what is like really like good that I've done. Like even when I won the award, I was still like, I don't know, really hard to like actually acknowledge it and say that went really well. I just won that award. It was like, yeah. So I think it's another conversation with women always like not really accepting and saying, yeah, I did really well. I smashed that. I think it was, I think I spoke quite well. I think I'm a good presenter, and I think that communication is really key. I think how you talk, how you present, and the clarity of it is actually it's really important. I think I have to say that I had an amazing marketing team formulate, help with a lot of like my branding, and so did Nakatomi. And I think the brand and then putting that into the pitch and making it look quite aesthetic and appealing did make a really big difference. These are just like little drops of, things that people have told me. And I think it was the clear covering, and this was actually some really good feedback, was that I had 4 minutes. I covered all the really key points an investor wants to know. So yeah. I covered from my solution, from my problem to my solution, to how we were validating that as an actual solution with our customers, who are our customers, what was our business model, how are we going to access the market, what was our product timeline, what amount did we need, as well as, our team and who I was and my background and why we're the right team. And I did cover all of that in that time. And I think that left investors with only some questions, which I then also I think I answered quite well, because at the end of these pitches, you can, get some kind of tricky questions. But because I think I've thought out, my idea and my product quite well. I haven't rushed it. I've really tried to follow what I think is the right way to do things based on all the courses, all the things that I've learned from all these people around me who've done this time and time again. And I think that showed to the investors or the panel that this wasn't something I just created overnight. I've been working on this for a while and planned out, its development and then its execution and deployment quite clearly. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but I think
absolutely. No, I was just jotting down quickly those things that you mentioned, because we look at the formula of what's in a great pitch, and you've probably ticked all the boxes there. So but to do it in 4 or 5 minutes, like that's probably one of the biggest challenges in getting all of that across really quickly so that people can understand it, because you've been working on it for so long. You know everything about it, but for other people to understand it, I think you made one point about clarity and people understanding the idea, not only the problem, but what's the solution, who's it for, and answering that really clearly so people aren't confused by what it is imperative. But it sounds like, yes, you've even in how you're speaking about it today, like it's clear that you have that clarity on your business, which is fantastic.
Thank you. I think it's part, my personality, perfectionist, but also it's the training I've done. I think medicine, what it does teach you is to be thorough and to do things right and evidence-based. And I think linking back to, looking at the data and acting on that. And that's how I actually think, people are like, oh, medicines can be so different to like commercial, career. But actually, there's so many skill sets that I've taken from my training as a doctor into now being a CEO of a company. Medicine teaches you, as I said, so there's research, make decisions based on evidence, but to lead, to communicate, to work in teams, to manage multiple things at one time under kind of high stress and remaining calm within those environments. And always seeking to learn more, to always be curious, to always be expanding your knowledge and be able to adapt, because medicine changes, right? So we might be trained in the first year of medical school that this is the latest treatment for this specific condition. And then you're in the hospital and actually now the research has changed and then there's a new drug, and you've got to constantly be checking and learning, and you're never stagnant. And I think that those have actually really helped me actually be a CEO of a company.
Absolutely, because nothing stands still in business, but we always say much like in medical professions, the same.
Hospital doesn't stay still, that's for sure.
But for Ovum in 2024, what are your main goals?
Main goals. Well, as I said, the MVP launch is on Monday, so that's big. Getting at least 300 women on board to trial it. We're at about 100 at the moment and growing, which is very exciting. So running that for 3 months and really understanding how Ovum is impacting on women and how we need to adapt it or change things to make it even better. So that's really the next 3 months, and finishing up the crowdfunding campaign, which will run to the end of May. So we have raised $20,000 through the award, but now we're trying to stretch to 30,000, because obviously if we can raise from the community, not only does it help us, raise funds that don't take away equity, but it also really shows that we're building community and that we're a validated product for women. And I think that's going to be really helpful for us to then raise our next amount of money to onboard our in-house team, have Ovum on market by the end of the year and continue to grow and scale it. Next goal would be to actually start our clinical trials. So having ethics through, having, women starting to, use Ovum in a hospital setting, which is a completely different setting to community, and having doctors and allied health using it and seeing the benefits. And then through that, with hopefully some investment, if anyone's listening that's interested, we will hopefully go to market by the end of the year, all things considered. So it's a big few months, but I believe that we'll get there. I do.
Absolutely. And if you fast forward, say 5 years, what do you hope that Ovum has achieved for women and women's health?
I hope that Ovum has really transformed women's experiences with their healthcare globally. So, of course, this is Australian based right now, but the aim is to go over to the US, to the UK, and to be reaching, groups of women that are the most vulnerable, that are lower socioeconomic or from, diverse sociocultural backgrounds, to really be helping these communities. I mean, fundamentally, they're the women that really need it the most, and be working with hopefully large advocacy bodies to instigate policy changes, but also working with research bodies to be contributing these data to actually have new medications and new diagnostic algorithms that are more reflective of women, even better understanding of how to diagnose a condition, for example, endometriosis, 4 years earlier, because we're picking up on longitudinal patterns that we just never have before. Another goal for Ovum is to get into, device world. So looking at how we can really create a more holistic biometric picture of a woman's health, along with her qualitative reporting of symptoms, so that we're really creating a whole new approach to women's healthcare. And that's where I'd see Ovum hopefully going. May take more than 5 years, but hopefully we get there.
And so a question within, I suppose, women's health, is it also covering like alternative health therapies and natural methods, as well as, I suppose, medical?
Yeah. So Ovum you can speak to Ovum about, you know, whatever you'd want to. If you wanted advice on alternative therapies, Ovum can provide that. It's trained to only access specific resources at the moment, so that it's not obviously going out of bounds of what we deem as evidence-based and acceptable for women. But as women begin to use Ovum more, it's its own trained AI. It's trained off real women's data, because we know that AI can be biased to white males. So obviously trying to combat that by creating our own data set. So fundamentally, so can you repeat the question for me?
It was just around if it had the ability to talk about
natural. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
So yes, if you want to speak to Ovum about supplements, things like acupuncture or just any kind of other alternative methods for managing something you're going through, Ovum can give you advice and talk to you about it. But again, I just want to reinforce that it is advisory, so it's not going to diagnose you the condition and tell you to use a specific supplement or to do a specific thing. It will just give you recommendations that you can then take away and say, oh, okay, I didn't know I could look into that, or speak to my doctor about this being an option. Okay, so it's meant to give you more of a platform on which you can go to your doctor and say, hey, well, I didn't know that I could actually try these supplements, or try acupuncture, or try going to a physio for this. And then that conversation's had, rather than maybe it being first, here's a medication, but I might not suggest all these other options.
Yeah.
Which not all, like a lot of doctors do try and have a more multimodal and kind of inclusive to complementary medicines approach, but some may not. And it just gives women that platform on which to stand on if they do want to access those things. We're also looking at hopefully partnering with, certain clinics that will provide, a very holistic kind of approach to women's health. And that way we're kind of integrating into a space where women can have, face-to-face contact with women's health professionals, whilst also having Ovum to support that experience.
Well, I'm so impressed by everything that you've managed to achieve to date. I'm very excited to follow the journey and look forward to seeing it launch in the App Store. For those that want to learn more about Ovum, what's the best way to get in touch or find out more?
Sure. So you can go, so first of all, go our Instagram page, which is ovum_a.i. So that will have a link to our website. Also, just will give you a bit of an insight into what the app looks like, who I am, and some awesome, great educational pieces about women's health through there. So you can also go to our website, which is www.ovum.a.i.com.au. So you can go there, and obviously all the links will be at the bottom of this podcast. Yeah. You can also contact me, so ariella@ovumtechnology.com.au, and I'd be happy to hear from anyone who wants to have a chat. Love to chat women's health. Love any questions that you have about the app, or even my business journey as a founder. Like, I love to support other amazing founders on their journey. So yes. And I also actually do have a podcast called The Pouch as well, which is where I sit on my couch and I talk to other amazing women about their journey with empowerment. So it's not just women founders. We actually have spoken to one woman founder, Olivia from Femtech, with the basal body temperature ring for helping track menstrual cycles. And Jamie Crowitz from Hide and Seek, which is a non-for-profit, which is talking about the language around eating disorders. So there's more to come, but you can also go on Spotify to check that out.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much, Ariella, for your time today. And I'd love to hear more about your story. And I'm sure many of the women listening will be downloading your app as soon as it's available.
I hope so. I really do. And I'd love as much feedback as possible, good and bad. So please don't hesitate to get in contact.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.